The Triarchate War Council convened in the luminescent chambers of the Celestium, where gravity flowed like liquid and stars hung motionless beyond crystalline walls. Thousands of worlds paid fealty to the Triarchate, a confluence of the Draxari, Velari, and Threx, species whose combined age of civilization exceeded 1,000,000 years. They were the arbiters of order, the architects of galactic law, the extinguishers of chaos. But now they argued not over the borders of empires or the rights of sentient machines, but over a species so recent it had barely registered in their archives a generation ago. Human behavior defies strategic rationale, High Strategos Verkel of the Draxari hissed, his voice like hot wind over obsidian. Their cohesion is illogical, inefficient. They're unpredictable, murmured Saukster of the Velari, her photonic core pulsing with anxiety. In the siege of Delcaris, they delayed their escape for an injured unit member. It cost them 3 vessels and half a regiment. And yet they won, said Grand Arbiter Tome, the Threx with his skin like flickering carbon fire. They forced the Krall's surrender. At the cost of inefficiency, they achieved victory, repeatedly. The chamber fell into contemplative silence as their memory constructs replayed footage of Earth's Terran command during the Delcaris offensive. Infantry hurling themselves into flame for a downed comrade. An orbital drop halted mid-deployment to extract 1 wounded corporal. No tactical model accounted for it. None explained the results. What did these primitives possess that gave them strength from weakness? In the fringes of Triarchate-controlled space on the former Krall world of Dimer 6, a Terran unit known only as Phoenix Squad moved under the twin suns' glare. Dust and iron winds carved ancient statues into alien ghosts, and orbital scans marked the place as long dead. Yet someone had reactivated deep energy signatures below. Lieutenant Commander Risa Malker knelt over the remnants of a metallic trail, fingers brushing against heat-singed stone. Recon 1, confirm direction, any shift in energy pattern. The voice crackled through comms, filtered through static and solar interference. East by 6 degrees, no visual but the signals pulsing in sync with Terran IFF codes. That doesn't make sense, muttered Sergeant Bryn Holt, rifle slung over his shoulder, visor scanning the distance. IFF codes were shut down last cycle, no units deployed here since Operation Ashnet. Unless someone was left behind, Risa said quietly. That phrase chilled the squad more than any threat of enemy fire. No one was left behind. That was doctrine, not just tradition. They had fought wars through urban hellscapes, across vacuum breaches, in subterranean nightmare machines, always with the promise that extraction was sacred. And if that code had been broken, they would fix it, no matter the cost. The bunker had been buried under a kilometer of collapsed strata, but the signal was real. Risa watched as engineers deployed nanoswarm excavators, the whir of drones harmonizing with the rumble of moving stone. Hours turned to half a day. Tension thickened. Above, orbital scans revealed faint radiation blooms, unregistered weapons tech, possibly Krall, but with anomalies, half familiar, modified. Then a voice pierced through long-dead channels, weak, fragmented. This is CPL, Adrian Cross, Terran Infantry Unit Theta-9 requesting extraction. I am not alone. Holt paled. Theta-9 was wiped out 2 years ago, on this world. There were no survivors, whispered Tech Officer Lenny Aval, pulling up war logs. Cross was listed KIA, confirmed. Rice's expression hardened. Then we have a ghost, or we have orders to disobey. Phoenix Squad advanced. The shaft opened like a scar, revealing corridors lit with faint red emergency strips. Inside was a blend of Terran and alien architecture, gunmetal bulkheads patched with organic alloy, life support cobbled from Krall filtration systems, a miracle of hybrid engineering held together by desperation. They found Cross 20 meters in, thin, gaunt, wrapped in what had once been a combat suit now fused with alien tech, but his eyes, sunken but alert, snapped to Risa as if waking from a nightmare. Squad leader, he rasped. They're still alive, 6 others, deep chambers, inhibitor fields are, he collapsed. Medics rushed in. Holt stood stunned, staring down the hallway. He's been here for 2 years, 2 years with no contact. They adapted Krall biotech just to survive. Vol was already hacking the inhibitor fields, her fingers blurring across her pad. Somebody wanted them buried. This whole structure, it's hidden from orbital systems, by design. Whose design? Asked Holt. But Risa knew, not Krall, not rogue mercenaries. The biometrics in the systems bore an unmistakable signature, Triarchate Black protocols. They had left humans behind. Intentionally. In the Celestium, Counselor Verkel watched the feed relayed from Dimer 6, narrowed gaze fixed on Cross's flickering biosigns. They will extract him, Tome said, as if predicting the movement of a chess piece. They will disobey recall, breach triarchate edicts, and risk war. All for one soldier. No, the Threx replied, for the principle that none are expendable. It is the foundation of their defiance, and we have never faced an empire built on loyalty over logic. The chamber grew colder. The war wasn't over. It hadn't even begun. The sky over Dimer 6 darkened unnaturally. High-altitude clouds shimmered with geometric precision, artificial formations that defied natural wind flow. Phoenix Squad had deployed deep into the substructure of the hidden installation when orbital surveillance flagged the anomaly. Atmospheric distortion, Risa asked, eyes scanning the map feed. Vol's response came with a trace of dread. No, cloaked descent signature, Triarchate-class cruiser, probably Velari. They're not broadcasting, they know we're here. Risa turned to her squad. We go silent, no transmissions, no external data pings, they want us gone without a trace. She glanced toward the medpod where Corporal Cross now rested under sedation. We're not leaving. Holt locked eyes with her, nodding slowly. Then we dig in. Below them, deeper into the structure, 6 faint life signs shimmered on the scanner grid, each one shielded by dense crawl alloy and something else, foreign to their databases, biological yet networked. It was a hybrid system, grown as much as built. They descended further. The holding chambers were unlike anything Vol had seen. Organic-laced panels reacted to proximity, parting with vascular-like contractions. The walls pulsed gently with residual heat and breath. Inside, they found the rest of Thetanine, barely alive, bodies suspended in vertical pods, intravenous fusion of Terran and alien life support keeping them alive in a tenuous stasis. One opened its eyes as they approached. A woman dark-skinned, bald, with a serial tattoo burned into her scalp, reached out weakly. Don't leave us. You're coming home, Holt whispered as he activated the release clamps. As the last of them were pulled from their chambers, Risa spoke quietly into her internal mic, bypassing comms. Prepare fallback route. Vol, start remote scuttling prep. This place burns if they try to take it. We're not going to fight a Triarchate cruiser head-on, are we? Holt asked. Risa didn't blink. No, we're going to outthink it. In orbit, the Velari Ascendant deployed a detachment of 600 drones. They moved like glass serpents, silent and unseen, embedding themselves in Dimer 6's upper mantle with surgical precision. From the cruiser's command sphere, Overseer-like Sthara observed the deployment with her lattice vision arrays. Beneath her, Terran forces were violating quarantine, recovering subjects from a site sealed by Triarchate orders. Unacceptable. She spoke in chorus with her ship's core. Contain, do not engage lethally, observe their methods, understand their flaw. The drones obeyed. They slipped through ancient crevices and collapsed corridors, invisibly tracking Phoenix Squad. The first sign of pursuit came in the form of a severed drone, hacked mid-transmission and turned to slag. It dropped at the squad's feet like a warning. Vol, Risa asked. They're watching, she said, but not attacking, which means they don't know why we're here. Then let's keep it that way. Extraction had to happen in 5 hours. Their transports, cloaked dropskiffs, hovered in the ionosphere just out of scan range. But between Phoenix Squad and the rendezvous point were nearly 10 kilometers of unstable terrain, drone surveillance, and the looming threat of Triarchate intervention. And they had wounded. Cross remained unconscious. The others from Thetanine were awake now, but weak. Some had neural scars from invasive biotech interfaces. Others bore implants clearly not of Terran origin, adaptive sensory nodes, cortical accelerators. The squad began to realize the truth. Thetanine hadn't just survived, they had been modified. Why would the Triarchate do this? Holt muttered as he carried one of the injured soldiers through a collapsed tunnel. We're not their enemies. They fear us, Vol said simply. Risa didn't answer, but she remembered the first contact archives, the unease in the Triarchate's tone even as they extended peace. They had welcomed humanity, but always with a hand near the holster. Because humans changed things. Not with superior firepower, not with ancient wisdom, but by refusing to break, by refusing to abandon each other. When the first drone ambushed, it didn't fire. It moved to intercept, darting between rubble, forcing the squad into a funnel. Holt recognized the pattern instantly, corral tactics. They wanted the squad pushed toward the open plateau, where orbital beams could disable them without casualties. Reverse route, he shouted, just as a second drone descended with non-lethal energy arcs sparking across its frame. Risa threw a flash cracker, one of their newer EMP grenades designed specifically to counter energy drones. It exploded in a bloom of static and white noise, dropping the first two machines instantly. "They're not killing us," Holt said, pulling back behind cover. "They're hurting us like prey." "No," Risa growled, turning over the shattered drone remains with her boot, like data points. "They want to see what we'll do. And we're going to show them." Vol accessed the drone remains and began rewriting its command protocols. "What are you doing?" asked Lenia Cross, the former squadmate of the wounded corporal and the most lucid of the rescued. Her eyes were bright with fury, a tremor in her voice. "You think they'll just let us go if we give them something?" Vol didn't look up. "No, I think we can feed them exactly what they expect." "Which is?" "That will turn on each other, that will prioritize the mission, that will calculate. They think we operate like them." Risa gave a grim smile, "But we don't." The next two encounters were staged. Phoenix Squad used captured drones, reprogrammed and rebroadcasting false telemetry to simulate the collapse of their unit cohesion. Vol sent data pulses showing territorial disputes between the humans, fragmentation of leadership, abandonment of wounded, all fabricated, all meant to confirm what the Triarchate believed. From her orbiting vessel, Overseer Sthara watched these signals with calculated satisfaction. They are fracturing. Loyalty is performance only. When faced with threat, they revert to self-preservation. The trap was set. But the reality was very different. As night fell on Dimer 6 and the surface winds howled over the jagged ridges, Phoenix Squad rallied beneath the radar shadow of a collapsed satellite array. The wounded were secure, embedded in a nanocarbon sled rigged for silence. The team moved in coordinated formation, unseen, one step ahead of their watchers. Cross stirred again, eyes fluttering open. "You came back." "Of course we did," Risa said, kneeling beside him. "You're one of us." His voice cracked. "They told me no one would come, that humans weren't like that." "They were wrong," she said, rising. "Now let's prove it." The next morning, the extraction skiffs breached the lower cloud layer, activated stealth harnesses, and dove to the predesignated pickup zone. The squad was already there, all accounted for. 7 survivors. 0 left behind. As the skiffs lifted off, one final transmission was sent, burst encrypted, bouncing off a shattered comms relay and up through the planet's decaying orbital path. It was a single line of Terran command code, a phrase encrypted only for one audience. "No one forgotten, no one left." It reached Sthara's command console minutes later. She stared at the message, parsing its simplicity. Her expression was unreadable. "Primitive sentiment," she said aloud. But there was a pause in her voice. A flicker of uncertainty. The seeds of confusion had been sown. And soon they would grow. The air aboard the Velari Ascendant had no scent, no temperature, no texture, engineered neutrality that dulled all sensation. Overseer Sthara stood motionless in her stasis column, suspended within the ship's cognitive core. Her mind churned in patterns too fast for speech. The data recovered from Dimer 6 replayed in fractal bursts, each loop revealing deeper contradictions. The humans had succeeded in their extraction. They had preserved every member of their unit. They had fabricated tactical failure to deceive surveillance systems. They had escaped not through superior technology, but by wielding loyalty like a weapon. The Triarchate had faced rebellion, fanaticism, even hive minds, but nothing like this. She opened a channel. "Send word to the War Council. Humanity is not to be underestimated further. They are a strategic anomaly." The reply came not in voice but in encoded color bursts, a direct override from High Strategos Verkel himself. "Observation continues. Do not escalate. They must not know we fear them." Sthara's eyes dimmed. Too late. On the Terran warship Aegis Rising, orbiting the moon of Mandrivi, Lieutenant Commander Risa Malker stood before Central Command in a debriefing chamber carved from obsidian alloy. The room was designed to intimidate, but she stood with the quiet certainty of someone who had already risked death and defied protocol. Across the table sat Admiral K. Des Rio, the only Terran officer with full wartime discretion against Triarchate interference. "Explain to me," he said, "why you ignored a recall order, extracted 7 soldiers from a restricted site, and engaged surveillance drones of an allied galactic power." Risa stared directly into his eyes. "Because they were ours." Silence. Rio leaned back. "We had a deal with the Triarchate, limited operations, no reactivation of post-crawl zones. Dimer 6 was off-limits." Then why were they experimenting on our people there? Rio said nothing. You knew, she said. I suspected. Why did Command tell us? Because the truth is heavier than the war effort can afford. Humanity is still considered a probationary civilization. The Triarchate classifies us as emergent. They don't trust emergence. Then they should start being afraid instead. Rio raised an eyebrow. They already are, that's the problem. In a shadowed hangar below command level, the survivors of Theta 9 underwent quiet reintegration. Scientists whispered over bioscans. Medics analyzed the Krull-integrated tech bonded to their bones and nerves, but one thing no scan could quantify was their unity. They moved together, spoke little, watched everything. They're tighter than any unit I've seen, Holt said quietly, even tighter than us. They had 2 years of isolation, betrayal, and survival, Vol replied. They didn't just wait to be saved, they kept the flame alive until someone came. They believed. They knew. Aboard the Aegis Rising, a signal breached the comms perimeter. It came not from a Triarchate beacon, but from a neutral relay station non-aligned far beyond Terran control. The transmission was simple, no threat, no ultimatum. A question. Why? It had no return signature, no request for identification. It didn't need one. The timing made it clear. The Triarchate wanted to understand what no algorithm could predict. Risa stood in the quiet dark of her quarters, the message hovering before her in holographic stasis. Why did we go back? She whispered. Cross had already answered it best, days earlier in the infirmary. Because no one else ever would. But elsewhere something stirred. The Ecliptor, a Triarchate vessel blacker than vacuum, activated from dormancy in the Centauri abyss. Its purpose was singular, capture and containment of disruptive species. It had not been launched in 6,000 years, not since the Rukar contingency. Its target, Earth. It would not fire weapons, it would not make war. It would dissect, subvert, isolate. The Triarchate did not yet want humanity destroyed. Only understood, neutralized. Its analysts believed the real threat was not technology but ideology. That loyalty, illogical, irrational, ferocious, was a virus that could spread to other species. And worse, that it might work. In the Terran outer defense grid, automated early warning satellites picked up distortions along the void corridors of Zone Theta Red. The data reached command within hours, but the source was untraceable. Admiral Rio summoned Risa to his command deck. We're being watched, he said. We always are. No, he said, this is different. The Triarchate is escalating without weapons. They're probing our psychology, our culture. He turned a monitor to face her. It showed alien forums, Velari, Draxari, even Threx arguing over Terran protocols. Videos of the Phoenix extraction had leaked. Some cultures called it madness, others called it inspiring. Some younger species had begun to emulate it. They wanted to study us, Risa said, realization dawning, but they started something instead. Yes, Rio said, and now they fear the spread more than the source. Across the galaxy, something strange began to happen. On the mining moon of Sixis 3, Velari workers refused to abandon a trapped drone operator, despite orders. On a Threx border vessel, a junior officer disobeyed chain of command to rescue a wounded peer, quoting Earth protocols. In the halls of the Triarchate War Council, old arguments grew sharper. They infect by example, growled Verkel. It is not their weapons, it is their refusal to break ranks. They bind to each other as if death means nothing, hissed like Sthara. They sacrifice when logic demands abandonment. They operate as if all of them are one, whispered Tome. They do not calculate survival, they declare it. And yet the war had not officially begun. No fleets moved, no invasions planned. But a battle was underway, a war for loyalty, for unity, for the hearts of species bred to obey hierarchy. And humanity, by doing the unthinkable, had cast the first stone. They refused to leave one behind. The galaxy had watched. And the galaxy would remember. The Ecliptor breached the boundary of Sol space in perfect silence. Its presence did not trigger alarms, did not stir the automatic defense matrix, did not so much as ripple the solar wind. It was a stealth artifact forged before the current cycle of civilization, its hull encoded with psionic masking fields older than language. It moved through the system like a shadow of thought, undetectable and unseen, save for a flicker caught only by accident. In a backroom lab beneath the Eurasian Orbital Institute, Dr. Kalen Doral stared at the anomaly with narrowed eyes. She had been tracing interstellar gravitational eddies when she noticed the displacement, 1 microsecond too late for any natural explanation. "This isn't a comet," she whispered. She flagged the data, sent it up the command chain. Within 4 minutes, it reached the attention of Admiral Rio. By the 5th, Earth's Strategic Silence Protocol was activated. "No beacons, no transmissions." "Not yet." In low Earth orbit, Risa stood aboard the Aegis Rising, watching the stars disappear behind stealth camo plating as the ship went dark. Emergency staff moved quietly, sealing bulkheads and encrypting data cores. "They're not going to shoot," Holt said beside her, "are they?" "No," she replied, "they're going to test us." Vol joined them, her face pale. "We've seen it before, haven't we? The Ecliptor-class vessels, not in battle, in archives, they show up after civilizational collapse, when species implode, when alliances fracture, they collect the pieces." "Cleansing without war," Holt muttered. "They don't burn the forest, they salt the soil." "And they've chosen Earth," Risa said. From within the Ecliptor, no commands were issued. It did not hail, threaten, or even declare presence. It simply listened. With passive arrays, it monitored every frequency of human communication: cultural broadcasts, civil defense drills, public debates, encrypted military chatter. It watched, and it found something disturbing. The data from Dimer 6 had spread, despite suppression. The story of Phoenix Squad and Theta-9 had reached the fringes of the galactic net. It had been translated, reinterpreted, turned into allegory, and fed back into alien civilizations. In Draxari youth enclaves, students studied Terran battlefield decisions as emotional poetry. On Velari science networks, ethicists debated the paradox of survival through loyalty. Among the Threks, entire cadres of sentient tactical AIs began requesting patches that included human risk tolerance profiles. The Ecliptor processed all of it, then shifted tactics. It began seeding provocations. In the asteroid colony of Hellion Prime, a Velari supply convoy vanished. A falsified message blamed Terran raiders. In the Dyson scaffolds of the Korth Ascendancy, a rogue signal activated weapons aimed at a Triarchate garrison, mimicking Terran code architecture. In the outer rim world of Quarinex, a coalition relief fleet failed to arrive. The last transmission claimed sabotage from a Terran-aligned AI. Each act precisely calculated to fracture trust, to paint humanity as volatile, to make loyalty itself look dangerous. Within days, Terran diplomatic envoys were recalled from 3 major worlds. Trade protocols were suspended in the Celian Passage. The Andari worlds voted to ban Terran presence in their autonomous defense networks. And yet, from within Earth's scattered colonies, something different stirred. Across dozens of fringe settlements, local non-human populations began reaching out unofficially, quietly, asking questions. "Is it true? Would you really sacrifice a mission for one soldier? Would you really defy orders for each other?" To each, the Terrans gave the same answer: "We already did." In response, Earth did not mobilize a fleet. They did something stranger. They opened up training access. The Phoenix Protocols, Rice's own after-action doctrine, cross-referenced with the extracted footage of Dimer 6, were published publicly, uncensored, under a universal access license. Terran Command explained the philosophy behind them in a digital archive called the Atlas of Bonded Survival. They did not frame it as dominance or superiority or strategy. They called it a choice. Every sentient was free to adopt it. It was not a weapon, it was an idea. And the galaxy did not know how to fight it. Back in the Celestium, the War Council fractured for the first time in recorded memory. "They are undermining our foundations," Verkel thundered. "Not with fleets, not with invasions, with the suggestion that their way is better." "They offer no guarantees," like Sthara replied, her voice trembling with something alien uncertainty. "Their doctrine invites instability, chaos, rebellion." "But it spreads," whispered Tome, "because it fulfills what logic has never offered, the belief that one life matters, that bonds matter more than outcomes." Verkel stood, his cloak of starcloth billowing with gravitic resonance. "Then we must purge it." And from the shadows, a lesser counselor of the Threks spoke a single sentence that changed the course of all their futures. "If we purge it, do we not prove it right?" In the silence that followed, far from the debating chambers, Overseer like Sthara reviewed the final report from the Ecliptor. The vessel had reached its conclusion. Humanity was not the danger. The idea of humanity was. They would not destroy Earth. They would isolate it, quarantine it, seal it off until the ideology could be contained. But as Thara stared at the final image, Phoenix Squad, lifting a half-dead soldier through burning corridors, she felt, for the first time in her long existence, something unquantifiable. Envy. Not of their strength, but of what they stood for. Risa Malker stood on the edge of a launch deck overlooking the Pacific expanse, watching new Terran vessels rise into the upper stratosphere. They were not warships, not yet. They were emissaries. Messengers. Not of power, but of promise. Behind her, the first graduating class of integrated recruits stood at attention, humans and aliens side by side, bound not by orders but by oath. No one left behind. The phrase was no longer just Terran. It had been translated into 700 languages, etched into banners, whispered in rebellion cells across the stars. And above them all the Ecliptor drifted, silent and invisible. Watching, waiting, hoping that what it feared most would not come to pass. But the galaxy had already seen the truth. And ideas once released cannot be contained. From the black veil of the Uit perimeter, where even sunlight grew thin, the Ecliptor issued its final protocol, Containment Phase Omega. Invisible satellites formed a quiet net around Sol. Quantum fields phased into resonance, locking Earth and her colonies into what the Triarchate called a behavioral isolation grid. To outside civilizations, it would seem Earth had simply withdrawn. Trade would trickle, communications stutter. No open conflict, no declaration of hostility, just silence carefully curated by ancient hands. The galaxy would forget the Terrans in time. The virus of loyalty would die in isolation. But the Triarchate misunderstood what they tried to contain. Loyalty was not a flame. It was a signal. And signals find a way through. 3 parsecs from the neutral hub world of Shaltor, a freighter from the independent Nix coalition drifted through customs protocols. Its crew, a patchwork of species and backgrounds, was silent as a data chip passed hand to hand toward a hidden port in the Navcore. It was not encrypted. It did not carry weapons, viruses, or propaganda. Just one recording, grainy footage of a soldier lifting his wounded brother across collapsing ground, flames licking at their heels, while the rest of the squad fought backwards to buy them both time. There was no voiceover, no call to arms. Just the moment. And a caption in Terran glyphs. One life, all lives. The customs officer, a Velari-born analyst, paused before clearing the file. He didn't delete it. He copied it, quietly, without report. And just like that, the signal moved on. In the Terran high-orbit platform Unity span, Risa watched as the isolation grid shimmered faintly in the void, a near-imperceptible mesh that made her world smaller by design. They want us to go silent, Holt said beside her, to burn out like a flare in the black. Then we don't go quiet, she replied, we go deep. In the months that followed, Earth shifted focus, not on expansion, not on armament, but on resonance. Terran engineers, scientists, and linguists began constructing a new type of beacon, something that would transmit not through conventional waves or hyperspace pulses, but through behavioral mimicry. Through story and pattern. Ideas wrapped in code and art, seeded into trade goods, cultural packets, even food. Loyalty as artifact. Sacrifice as protocol. The first carriers were not Terran at all. They were alien volunteers. Exiles, believers. Smugglers, philosophers, defectors from the edge species who had seen in Terrans not threat, but hope. A new allegiance was being born, one not of species or territory, but of shared principle. The Order of the Bonded Flame. Its oath was simple. None are left. None are lost. None are alone. Inside the Celestium, the War Council fractured further. Verkel called for a purge. Like Sthara warned against open confrontation, Tome, once the quietest among them, rose from his throne of knowledge and did something no Triarchate leader had done in 8 millennia. He resigned. He walked away from power, and in doing so, drew others with him. Among the Threks, young tacticians refused orders that demanded the sacrifice of units. Velari pilots overrode fleet matrices to recover downed comrades. Draxari line commanders defected, citing the Phoenix Doctrine as their new military creed. The triarchate held dominion no longer through fear. And without fear, they were only memory. In the asteroid monastery of Kairavalan, a message arrived encoded in sensory bursts, designed for a species that spoke only in emotion. A monk there, ancient and eyeless, wept uncontrollably as he received the sequence. Not out of grief, but recognition. The story of Phoenix Squad had been translated again, this time into harmonic frequencies that stirred shared memory across cultures. Each version of the story was different, but in each one, someone had been saved. Not because they were useful, not because they were critical, but because they were not left behind. Years passed. The Ecliptor remained silent and patient, waiting for Earth to fail. It had no protocol for what came instead. From inside the isolation grid, Terrans built nothing new in terms of ships or weapons, yet their cultural output increased 1,000-fold. Holodramas, music, ethical games, philosophical AI exchanges, fictional narratives embedded with emotional structure mimicking bonded unit behavior. The stories went out into the galaxy not by force but by fascination. People wanted to feel what Terrans felt. They wanted to understand how a species could hold the line for a single comrade. Soon, recruits to other militaries began asking for Phoenix Protocol training. Diplomats cited it as evidence that emergent civilizations could stabilize others. It wasn't war. It was resonance, the kind no grid could contain. And one day, aboard a quiet freighter from the Helari Compact, an alien child looked up from a data slate and asked her mother, "Would you come back for me like the humans do?" And the mother knelt, kissed her forehead, and said, "Now I would." Back on Earth, in the dawn light beyond the Ecliptor's watching eye, Risa Malker stood on a cliff of black stone, looking into the sky that no longer belonged to her alone. Beside her, Holt unwrapped a folded Terran flag, stitched now with not just blue and white, but threads of green, silver, and violet. "For what we started," he said. "No," Risa replied, "for what we changed." She looked upward. "Let them quarantine us, let them call us primitive, we are not finished." She turned back toward the rising sun, where the future waited. "We are just getting started." And far, far away, the stars pulsed with a rhythm never felt before. Not of conquest, but of return, of sacrifice, of loyalty. And in the great ledger of civilizations, where victories are weighed by numbers and glory, a new entry appeared, not marked by war or wealth or dominion, but by 7 soldiers who would not leave one behind. And the galaxy finally understood.